Welcome everyone to this episode of BRM TV, where Phil Parker provides an introduction to the most basic of kit building with a suburban coach kit from Dapol. I fine-tune a DCC controlled uncoupler, as featured in this issue, and we examine Bill Flood's narrow gauge layout that went down well at last year's Whalley show. For its mid-century architecture alone, it excels.
My name is Bill Flood, and my layout is Derwent Road. The layout can be operated by one person, but it's a little bit taxing. It's easier to work with one person doing the out front bit and somebody else behind the scenes manning the fiddle yard, checking stock, moving locos from one end of the trains to the other. Operation itself is fairly simple. We've got sand trains going anti-clockwise around the layout, empty sand trains going clockwise, and the passenger trains run into the station, run round and run back again, because the premise is that the Preservation Society has only got control of the line as far as Derwent Road, and that's as far as the light railway order has been granted, and so the passenger trains aren't permitted to go on further north from the station. The track plan was designed to give some space, because one of the things I really don't like in a model railway is lots and lots of track and nothing in between. So thinking about what we actually need, we need to have a run round loop and a couple of sidings, and also wanted to have some space to see the trains running through the scenery. The previous layout, Buttermere Mining, was all running through scenery basically, and that, I think it's very attractive to see the trains just trundling along. The track I've used on the layout is the Pico 009 track. It isn't a perfect fit. The sleepers are perhaps a little bit too close together, the sleepers are perhaps a little bit too short, but when it's in and ballasted carefully and painted, it actually looks good and it runs well. The only modification is a little bit of modification to the points to make them more DCC friendly. It just means that point blades are actually bonded to the stop rails. The back scene is a print done by a local printer. I was going to go and visit Leighton Buzzard. That's a 2-hour trip from home, and the idea of getting there and it being nice and sunny was going to be a problem. The town I work in, called Thornbury, was actually built at the same time as Leighton Buzzard, and the houses are identical. It's almost as if they're from a standard set of plans. So I took the picture for the back scene in Thornbury and took 6 photos and used Photoshop to stitch them together and trim them. The buildings are mainly brick sections, and then bridging under the windows, it's usually wooden panels. I hadn't got any access to buildings, so it was a matter of taking photos and counting bricks and knowing the size of a brick and the size of a brick course to work out how big the buildings were. Then a little bit of scaling to reduce the size because they were still too big. On my initial sort of diagrams and sketches for the layout, there were going to be about 5 houses, but when I actually started to try and work out how big they were going to be, they wouldn't fit in the space. The fences are basically lots and lots of little tiny bits of wooden strip wood that have been chopped up using a chopper to the right lengths and then stuck together with PVA glue. After being stuck together with PVA glue, then a wash of alcohol with ink in it and some acrylics, and the screw holes are basically fine felt tip pen dots. So it's quite a tedious process and quite simple materials, but I think it does the job, it looks quite effective. When I first started using DCC, the thing that struck me straight away as soon as you started running a layout with it is that you could put a loco anywhere and leave it anywhere. You're not being bound by section switches, and since then all my layouts have been DCC. Also largely no control panels because you control things from the throttles. Sound is the other big one, the big selling point for me really with DCC. In fact, you've got the control over the individual functions, and we've now got about 10 locos on Derwent Road that have got sound in them. 09 is a bit of a challenge because small locos with only 4 wheels, it's difficult to get a big decoder in there, so it's quite small decoders and you can't get a stay alive chip in there. So we are a bit prone to interference from dirt during running sessions, and so we end up having to do track cleaning during running sessions. The ambient sound thing is something that I first discovered and thought about and used on Buttermere Mining. It seemed quite nice to have the background sounds of birds. Buttermere Mining was set in the countryside, and so I found a program runs on a PC called Atmosphere. And Atmosphere basically lets you select a scene, so you can choose a country meadow, for example. You can turn seagulls on and off and turn the wind up and down. So the soundtrack running behind Derwent Road has got, in addition to the birds and everything else, has got traffic passing, and has also got some loco sounds added on top. As a starting point for the trees on Derwent Road, some of the work by Gordon Gravitt in his books on tree making. So the tree armatures are copper wire, then with some sort of filler mixture around them, painted, and then various types of foliage glued onto them after the tree's been painted. Scenic details on the layout have come from all over the place. Things like the telegraph poles, the phone box are Pico products. The lamps, street lamps, I made out of brass tube because I couldn't find anything anywhere that fitted the design I wanted. The benches, again, I think are a Pico product. The rest of the buildings are scratch built. In a year, Derwent Road will probably go to 2, 3, perhaps 4 shows. Derwent Road was designed to fit in the back of my small Ford. So the limit on the baseboard length is round about the sort of 42 inches, and the width about 18 inches, so that the 2 baseboards would fit across. And the whole of the layout and the legs and all the stock and interior second person will fit into the car. The layout's taken me so far about 3 years to build. It's now largely complete. There will be a few details added, a few bits refined. I think I've already got some offers of shows coming in for 2020, so it'll certainly be staying on the circuit for that long. But a new layout will be started. There are some possibilities. One of my current thinking is something based on the Alan Keith's works. Alan Keith builds and repairs locos, and it's just a fascinating idea to have a completely random selection of locos on the layout of different gauges. So I'm thinking that might mix on the new layout 9mm gauge and 14mm gauge with perhaps a mixed gauge track, which will allow me to run some of the 14mm gauge locos I've got currently building on that layout.
So in this issue of BRM, you'll have seen me install this automated uncoupling system from Keen Systems, the Zen Black DCC Concepts decoder, and well, I felt it was a little bit easier and probably wiser to illustrate for you on DVD rather than in the magazine how this can all be fine-tuned to make sure that we get the perfect height for the uncoupling system, and also to make sure that it works as it should do with rolling stock. So here we are. I've got a little test plank in place here. We've got Bachmann's Dynamis Ultima DCC control system in place. It's all wired up and connected. Decoder's wired up as well. But before we get to the decoder and just taping off some of those little contacts, I want to talk about the couplings that you'll find on your rolling stock. Now, this coupling here we're going to set at the correct height. But what is the correct height? If we look at 2 items of rolling stock here from the same manufacturer, Hornby, we've got a newer wagon here, this hopper, from a 3-pack of wagons which arrived not so long ago for review in the office. If we compare this to an older tooling from Hornby, so same manufacturer, older tooling, this is its vent van, which of course has been revamped a little bit with the inclusion of a decoder inside for the sounds, but the coupling height remains of the older style. So if we just put these 2 wagons side by side, you can see there that there's a difference in height of almost 2mm, and 2mm might not sound a lot, but that can be 2mm higher, it can be 2mm lower, and you can end up with a difference of 4mm between 2 items of rolling stock from 2 different manufacturers. So I'm going to take the newer item of rolling stock here, this hopper, as an example, because things have sort of been standardised a little bit better in recent times, and we're just going to offer it against the height of the coupler here and just see what height we need to fit this coupler at. So at the moment you can see it's pretty much level, as it should be. I can, of course, if I want, lift up this little actuator here, you can see there, which will lower the height of the bar, or alternatively push it down and it'll lift it up a little bit higher. So I haven't glued this into place just yet, but what we're going to do is just find out what the correct height is of that bar to make sure it works. So pink wire connected to the decoder, blue, which is the common, returning to the decoder. That means that it's going to be function output number 4, I do believe, on the Dynamis. So let's just get this thing fired up. So we can see on screen here we've got locomotive 5. Well, it's not 5, it's a new decoder, so the default address will be 3. So we're just going to go into the menu here. We're going to select 3. I'm going to validate that. And just to make sure that we've got the right locomotive, let's just apply a bit of power. Hey presto, it starts to move. So we know that we've got the right locomotive. Now all we need to do is just test the function button, which should be F4. So let's just give it a go with function button number 4. Okay, so you can see there it's not dropping down and releasing the coupling, so we're going to need to adjust that a little bit. Let's just try lowering it a fraction to say about there. So if I just manipulate the actuator here and press on function 4, you can see that it drops a little bit, so I'm just going to adjust it now so that it drops beneath the height of that coupling to about there. If I now clip it back up, there we go. So we want it round about that height. You can see it's just releasing there on the coupling, and when it's up at the standard height it will couple back up to the wagon. So this is pretty much the height we want to set the coupling at. Now it's a plastic item on a plastic chassis of the tender, so I want a glue that will adhere very well but give me just a little bit of time to flex and move it into position whilst I test this to make sure it sets in the right place. So super glue is a little bit too fast, so rather than go straight for the bottle of super glue, I'm just going to use some, it's Mr. Cement Deluxe from Mr. Hobby. I'm just going to put a little bit around the outside of the actuator there, and whilst it dries, make sure by double checking it again that it's at the right height. So let's just apply this sparingly around the outside of the actuator. It's better to apply plenty of this than not enough, because you don't really want this coming loose. If it comes loose, then obviously the whole entire project's been a waste of time, and you're going to get trains coming loose on your layout. So let's just double check that again as that dries. Okay, so the glue is now dried, and I'm just going to test it to make sure that it's in the correct position. So dropping it down, back up, it appears to be working just fine. So let's just try moving the locomotive around a bit now. And in terms of modifications, well, it's fairly straightforward, this one really. It took about a day or so, bearing in mind that is with taking pictures for the article in the magazine. So you could probably do this easily over the course of a weekend at home if you wanted to. There we go, just tuck those wires into place, return the body shell in situ. And all that remains to be done now is just to paint that little coupling hook black, and hey presto, you've got an automated coupling ready for use on your layout, and you can uncouple your wagons wherever you want on your layout. You're not tied to that specific area with an electromagnet and a push button underneath your control panel, so you're saving all the wiring under your layout as well. There you go. Why don't you give it a try? Take a look at Keen Systems website. You'll find the details on screen below. And if you'd like to get hold of one of these DCC Concepts Zen Black decoders, well, check them out also. You can find the address also on screen below. Until next time, take care.
Now, we all know that people say that railway modelling is getting more and more expensive. Everything seems to cost more, and you know, if you want to fill your layout or you're fairly new to the hobby, you do wonder, can I afford to build the trains that I actually want? Well, one way of saving money is to build yourself rolling stock from kits. Now, I know this is a scary concept and people often wonder why you do this sort of thing. But I enjoy it, and it's a great way of just feeling that you've got more involvement in your hobby. Now, this time, I thought we'll go for the easiest coach kit to assemble. And these are suburban coaches from Dapol. They come in a plastic bag like this, sophisticated packaging, and I paid 11 quid for this one, and that's all in. The great thing, what Dapol have done is something very, very clever. Older viewers may remember Triang did something called the CKD range, which was completely knocked down, and they were literally ready to run coaches that they supplied in pieces in a box, and the modeller had to assemble them themselves. Now, modern models don't really lend themselves to doing that sort of thing because they're very complicated. There's an awful lot of bits, but Dapol have access to some older models which do, and so they sell them pre-painted. You can see if I fight my way into the plastic bag that this model is partly pre-painted. All the paint on the sides is there, and the lining is on, it's numbered, and so you haven't got to do the worst bit of any coach modelling, which is to paint the thing. And then you get a series of plastic parts that should just clip together. Let's find out. First things first, instructions. Read the instructions. Now, they're very honest here in that because these are relatively old models and certainly relatively old moulds that they've been produced from, there does need to be a little bit of cleaning up of them, and so you're recommended to sand the bottom edges of the roof moulding and take some pips off the clear stuff. And I also found there was a bit of flash along the edges of the underframe. All a few seconds work to deal with a sharp knife, just a little bit of a trim, and there we are. After that, you just simply follow the instructions and you should end up with a nice working coach. Let's open out the bag of little detail parts as well, because there's the wheels are included, although I have to say they are plastic wheels and it does benefit from replacing them with metal eventually. Construction starts with the plastic underframe and following the instructions, making sure that you clip the body on the correct way round, and then a steel weight drops into the area in the middle, easy enough, and then the seats drop in after that. Now, it's worth pre-painting the seats and the interior if you want to, because quite frankly, once the roof's on, you aren't going to get back in there. Make sure you've got it all the right way around, because if the seats won't go in at this stage, it means you put the underframe and the body the wrong way around. Next, I'm just going to break off the windows. Now, these actually do give a degree of flush glazing, which is certainly nice, and they're certainly well moulded as well. They don't want to come off. Just a quick trim with a knife. These wiggle down inside and they should push into place on the inside of the coach. Now, I do find that they do take a little bit of a wiggle to get them to seat properly, but what you're looking to do is to make sure that the windows push into the raised parts of the windows here, push into the window frames. A little bit of time, they wiggle into place and snap into place once they're fully home. And finally, paying attention to the way round that these go, the roof should fit on as well. Before I put the roof on, one job I do need to do is to push in the ventilators. Now, these are called torpedo ventilators because of the shape of the sort of central part of it. They're a sort of pointy thing with a hoop on the outside, and the pointy thing should point across the coach. And these should just push in to the roof. To be honest, there's a lot of them, so I'm not going to fit them. I'm not going to make you watch me sit and push all of these through the roof. Occasionally you find some of the holes are a little bit tight, and what I do is I just stick the knife in the bottom, rotate it, and that just opens out the hole. When that happens, it's just not come out of the mould perfectly cleanly, but a little bit of opening. Don't go mad. You don't want an enormous hole, but they should push in quite nicely, and then just twist them to make sure that the pointy things are running across the roof. The roof then goes on the top. What you can do, if you're really worried about these things, put a little bit of solvent on the inside, and that will just bond them in. To be honest, I've not had one fall out yet when I've forgotten to put the solvent in. The roof then clips on the top and snaps into position, so. And then all I need to do is put some underframe together. Now, there's no NEM coupling pockets on these things. These date from the 1980s, and So the couplings just snap. There's a little coupling pocket made up, but it's not actually NEM compliant. But the top snaps on, the coupling snaps into there, and you put the wheels in to making sure the pinpoints of the wheels have gone into the holes in the bogie side frame. One area that people do say is that a set of metal wheels will make these things run a bit better. They actually aren't too bad as they are. You can see it runs backwards and forwards quite freely there. And I'll just snap pop the coupling on the second one. Yeah, you can replace the wheels with Hornby ones. Hornby do a very nice set of replacement metal wheels, and they should just drop straight in. Metal wheels are better for your track in many ways, because plastic wheels are a bit notorious for spreading dirt around, and as I've noted in past videos, dirt is the enemy of electrical conductivity for trains. So metal wheels generally are a better bet on your layouts if you can get a replacement pack. The plastic ones will work quite happily, and they'll get you up and running, and certainly do the job for the time being. There's a pivot that just pops through the centre of the bogie in there, and okay, I've got to put the rest of the ventilators in. And I also just need to put the vacuum pipes in that just push into the end. And there we have it. A coach. It's that simple. Now, to be honest, it really is that simple. So there we are. In its simplest form, I have made a coach that will run perfectly well on any 00 gauge model railway. And to be honest, it looks nice. These are quite nice coaches. When Airfix originally released them, they were considered state of the art. But modern coaches just do look a little better. They've got more external fittings. So there are a few things you can do to this coach to improve it. And here's one I did earlier. Now the first changes I've made are before I've assembled it. I've painted things. So the underframe, I've given a spray of matte black paint. I'm not a big fan of self-colored plastic. It always looks a little bit shiny. Matte black paint just brings just makes it look the proper sort of colour for the layout. On one side I've even dry brushed it slightly with a bit of dark grey just to bring up the detail, and there is quite a bit of detail in this. This is a job to do before you assemble everything. Makes life a lot easier. On the roof I've sprayed it with a pale grey. Again, spray it before you assemble it, and then once I've put the thing together, I've just dusted it with weathering powders and worked over the top of it with a large brush, just to make it look a bit mucky. Coach roofs in steam days certainly would be fairly dirty. I'm building this as what I would call a layout model. That is, it's going to look good enough running around on my layout. It is not a glass case model, but then glass case models don't come in at 11 quid a pop, so you cut your cloth to suit yourself. But one little touch I do like is to paint the handles, because on the model they're painted maroon. In real life they'd be brass, and painting them just brings it alive a little bit. Now I know a lot of people are going to look at this and go, Phil, that's incredibly fiddly work, painting all those little handles. But actually, there are a couple of tricks you can do to make life easier. I'm going to use an acrylic paint, just squirt a little bit of it onto my palette, pick up a little bit of paint on the brush, and then hopefully the camera can see this. Don't try and paint down it. Actually hold the brush at 90 degrees and almost flat to the body side, and just rub the top of the handle with the paint, and you'll find that it's a lot easier to do that without getting paint everywhere. And you can also do the door handles. Again, keep the brush flat, and let's just do one more. Oh, and now I've gone and got paint everywhere. No worries. The sharp-eyed might have been wondering why I'd got a second paintbrush. And the trick with the second paintbrush is to just get it a little bit damp and use it in combination with a bit of paper towel to do what we might call paint lifting. Just use the tip of the brush around the edge just to remove the excess paint, and you'll probably have to go over this several times, every time just wiping the brush off on the paper towel. And there we go. It's almost like I didn't make a mistake in the first place. I often say that the ability to do a good model is not so much to get it all right first time, but know how to bodge things to look nice when you get it wrong. And there you are. Nobody's going to ever be able to tell that I got it wrong. So there we have it. Simple coach building for any 00 gauge model railway.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of BRM TV. For those of you looking for more videos, visit our website worldofrailways.co.uk and explore recent articles, news, video clips, show discounts and sign up for our new weekly newsletter. Until the next episode, happy modelling.